Hey Chris, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm happy to see you.
Yeah.
Um, where are you right now? Are
I
you?
am in Washington, D.C. Yeah, I'm in Northeast D.C., so not too close to the capital, but not too far.
Yeah, it's not like a giant place.
Yeah.
I've been there briefly.
Yeah.
I live in a different kind of small place, just like few people, but wide open spaces. So
Nice.
it's a totally different
Yeah, that's
vibe.
how I grew up. It was a big it was a country town. I mean, the population, we had like 3,000 people there, but you know, it was not the city at
And
all.
that was in North Carolina?
Yeah, southeastern North Carolina. Yep. A lot
Okay.
of folks know where Wilmington is. They've heard of Wilmington.
Yeah.
And so my hometown was about 40 minutes from there.
Okay.
Yep.
And what was that like?
It was pretty good. A lot of hurricanes, a lot of hurricanes. But aside from that, it was awesome. You know, my whole family, born and raised down there. Most of them still live down there. So it was a great way to grow up. You're just basically just like constantly hanging out with 50 of your best friends almost every day. So it was pretty awesome. My grandparents' neighborhood was like, it's interesting in the South. A lot of the communities there are still segregated, just because at one point historically they kind of had to be segregated for safety, and so they still are. And so my grandparents' neighborhood was like all family in this one neighborhood in this little town called Richlands. And so across the street, my grandparents lived over there. Their grandparents lived across the street from them at one point. They had cousins around every other corner. It was really cool. So we could just run around the entire neighborhood and
Uh,
just be playing until it got dark when we had to come home. It was awesome. Great
it
way to
sounds
grow up.
pretty idyllic.
Yeah.
So what happened after you graduated high school? You went to college? Did you go to
Yep.
college? Yeah,
Yep. Went to Appalachian State University, which is in the mountains of North Carolina,
cool.
in the Blue Ridge. And so just a whole different kind of beautiful. I love it so much. I try to go back once a year, and I hope that when I get to retire, that is where I get to retire, is in
Uh,
Boone, North Carolina. Yeah, just beautiful.
what
Just
did you take there?
music education. I was pretty sure from the time I was in sixth grade I was going to be a high school band director,
No
and
way.
then I got a whole nother career in music just dropped at my feet. So
Wow. And what made that change for you? Like what was that?
it was a combination of things. The first was in North Carolina specifically. Unfortunately, they have such a love for the athletic programs at various schools, and not quite as deep of a love for the band programs at those schools. And so for me, it was like knowing my personality, imagining myself having to have a conversation with a principal and a school board about why the arts department needed the same amount of money that the football team was getting. I was like, yeah, that's never going to go well. I
Yeah.
cannot, I'm not the one to have that conversation calmly, not me. And so I was like, that won't do. And then just circumstances. I ended up filling in the gig for a friend, loving that, writing a song, and then kept writing songs and just really loved it, and thought, people think I'm all right at this, so maybe I'm just gonna do this. And I just kept doing it and got better and better at it. So I was like, well, this is fine. Then I don't have to convince anybody that I should have a gig, because I'm either going to take the gig or not. So
Right.
it seemed like a better fit for my personality to be my own boss, as opposed to like, a poor cog in the music education wheel. They just get so little respect down there. Oh, man.
That no. Well, I feel like you made the right choice anyway.
Good, thank you. Yeah, mom was okay. She was like the toughest sell, and so once mom was on board, I was like, okay, this is fine. I can just do
Amazing.
this now. Yeah,
Wow. Okay, that's good.
yeah,
Yeah. You got to have mom on board.
definitely.
Otherwise, it's very lonely.
Yes, yes, and it can be so cold.
I love how this like global music match is making it feel smaller. Like I feel
Yeah,
like we're all in a backyard or a green room of a festival or
yeah,
something.
just hanging,
No,
waiting to go on player set.
I've been missing that. Have you been
Oh
missing that?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Since March, have you played any shows with an audience?
No, in person, no, no. I will not play any in person shows. I don't think until 2021.
Yeah.
I just, even here they're trying to do things like have them outside and like in the back yards of restaurants and different things and like venues and having them outdoors. And some people feel comfortable and safe doing that, but I just am not one of those people. I don't feel comfortable doing that just because even if I get out of there and I do not get sick, the worry of one of my fans contracting COVID-19 because they wanted to like take a gamble and come to an outdoor show because they thought it was safe enough, it would just be horrible. So
Yeah.
I'd just rather wait if I can. I'm just going to try to hold out.
Yeah, I think that's really smart,
Yeah.
and wise, as
Yeah.
sad as it is.
I know. You know, my audience is a little older than a lot of other people's audience, so I gotta watch out for those guys.
It's true, mine too. I think we
Yeah.
have a similar age range.
Yeah.
um, but so what was the last gig you played?
So the last gig I played, actually played with Heather at her tour. She did a tour for her album release called Glimmer, and so we played in Chicago. We played a So Far show up in Chicago. So that was the last show that I played physically, and then my last show that was just a Chris Matthews show before that was in Vermont. So at least the last one was a really pretty one. So
When was that?
at the end of February,
Oh my gosh.
yeah. You know, it's just like it feels like years ago at this point. It's been a few months. It's crazy.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
It's just gonna feel so good when we get back, though.
yeah, yeah. That's one of the things. Like, so in living in DC, I actually live with another songwriter, which has been very nice and has helped me maintain my sanity. I think pretty much exclusively throughout this whole process has been great living with other people. And so, because of that, as soon as everything kind of locked down, Heather and I tried to figure out like how can we maintain connection with our fans, you know, because who knows when we're going to see them again. And so we actually tried to start this online community.
Oh,
So we would gather them every Sunday, starting like mid to late March, and had met every Sunday until our Pride tour started, our virtual Pride tour. And week after week after week, you know, we were joking because you can't get those same people to come to a consecutive show barely 3 months apart at the same venue. You know, they're like,
yeah.
I just saw you 3 months ago. I'm going to wait till the next one. And they would be there week after week after week after week just to try to, you know, feel not so alone. And it was really beautiful. It was actually kind of, I think, for me, it helped set the tone for what this isolation was going to be because we were seeing people lean into one another and not let the fear, you know, make the isolation even worse. So, yeah, we actually got very lucky in that regard. Our kind of first exposure to what humanity was going to look like in the quarantine was a little bit different because all of those amazing people just trusted us and went on that journey with us. And so we ended up coming out of it with like this really strong, beautiful group of people who were just like, we're apart together. It was cool.
And is that where the song came from, 6 Feet Apart, which is
Sort
so
of.
beautiful?
Thank you so much. Yeah, sort of. So the first bit of that, it was twofold. So sitting on Facebook, you know, nothing else to do in the pandemic, just scrolling through Facebook. I see one of my friends post, and she's a Jewish woman, and she was posting kind of this wake up, what are you thinking about post in a way. It was like for her and her ancestors and her history, her family history, you know, people surviving the Holocaust or trying to survive the Holocaust, being told to stay home and stay hidden to keep themselves safe, to keep themselves alive, and literally have to do that in absolute silence because the fear of being discovered could literally mean your life.
Mm-hmm.
And so she kind of had this moment where she just was fed up with seeing her other friends complaining about the fact that they were having to stay home during the pandemic to keep themselves and their family and neighbors safe. Like people were so busy complaining about that when it initially happened, when the lockdown initially happened. And she just kind of offered up this beautiful perspective. Like, we literally can still sing and dance and do everything that we could already do, but we have to do it from the safety and comfort of our home, our very comfortable 21st century modern homes. What are you complaining about? You know what I mean? It was such an awesome post, the way she worded it. And it just struck a chord with me. And right after seeing that post of hers, I got this lovely message from some fans who were actually at that show in Vermont, at the last show that I played. And she was saying, you know, my fiance and I were at that show. We loved it so much. And now here we are, we're engaged, but we can't be together because she works on the front lines and we have kids. And so we have to keep our kids safe. And so we're isolating from one another.
Mm-hmm.
And it just was like the thought of one, how sad that was to be in this really beautiful part of your relationship. Like that engagement phase is so beautiful and lovely.
Yeah.
And to imagine spending that away from your fiance because you have to try to keep them safe, it was like this double-sided love sword. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. And so those two things kind of sparked the song. And yeah, I started writing it. Heather heard it and was just like, oh yeah, I need to get my hands on that. And I was like, all right, let's do this. This will be our first co-write. Let's do it. And it turned out so great. I was so happy with it. So happy with it.
Amazing, and it's touched so many people's hearts, which
Yeah,
is,
it's so nice to hear that from folks, you know. You know, you want to try to be a beacon of hope, especially in times like these. Like this is when you really cut your teeth. If you try to walk that walk, like show me how you're trying to spread hope during the pandemic. You know what I mean? And so it was just like such a great thing to be able to give that to people and to give that to us too, because you know we needed that as well. But to be able to offer people up something hopeful and beautiful and still full of love in the middle of something so scary.
You write a lot of different kinds of songs, but the ones that have been coming up and are so important lately are the ones that have been speaking to the COVID pandemic and to the Black Lives Matter, a whole, like there's the political situation in the States. I mean, it's not easy right now, I think, being an American.
Yes,
And I
that
just
is
wondered
exactly right.
if you wanted to talk about that a bit.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's kind of all I can talk about these days. You know, it's like I haven't written a love song in so long since you know 6 Feet Apart was like the one outlier, and it has been a very interesting 4 years to say the very least. You know, for me, I didn't anticipate being a social justice songwriter, but it was like I don't I was not raised to see wrong happening in plain sight and not speak up about it and not call it out and not try to do something about it, not try to do something productive about it. And so, because I am a songwriter and because I have the platform that I have to. I literally have to try to reach even just one person. This conversation that we're having in this country right now about Black Lives Matter is such a reckoning, and it has been such a long time coming. There's a song of mine that was written a few years ago that people are kind of finding their way to now because of this moment, and I'm like, that song was written after Trayvon Martin was killed. Like, this is how long we've been having this conversation,
Mm-hmm.
and now you know people are coming to the table in larger numbers, which is great because I think we actually will get some actual meaningful change coming our way. I do hope and believe that. But it's just unfortunate, you know, that it's like we've literally been trying to have this conversation for several years. Just this part of it, the bigger
Yeah.
part of it, we've been trying to have that conversation for almost 400 years.
Yes.
And so, you know, it's just it's a strange time to be an American. It's an exciting time in a way because we are getting to really see if this grand idea of democracy is real, if it is actually capable of meeting its promise. And so, in that regard, it's actually a very exciting time because you are seeing so many people put their skin in the game and put their bodies on the line for their fellow Americans to say, I see you, I see this injustice happening. I'm speaking out. I'm done, you know, being the quiet pacifist or just being like, no, no, you know, we just don't know all the facts. And like people are outraged, you know, people who weren't outraged 4 years ago and 6 years ago are outraged now
Mm-hmm.
and are trying to have this conversation or trying to sit at this table and try to help move this conversation forward. So it's encouraging. It's difficult because we are seeing so much horror at the same time that we were living through this pandemic. We were seeing horrors like George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery be brutally murdered. But we are also seeing so many people come to the table to say no more. And so it is a hard time, but it is also a very, very beautifully inspired time as well.
What is next for you? Like, what's pandemic aside,
Yeah,
what do you want to do?
the plan this year was to actually release a new album of social justice music, and it's kind of one of those things where my mom always, she's a preacher, she always likes to say that line, all things work together for good. And
Mm.
so I actually had planned to release a social justice album this year, and then I've written two songs that have to go on that album since the pandemic. So it was kind of like, okay, well, I'm glad I didn't release it and couldn't release it because now these two songs are going to go on it. So I'm going to try to launch a Kickstarter to go ahead and get them done. It felt really tone deaf to try to launch a Kickstarter when people were not even sure if they were going to have a job, if they were going to be able to put food on their tables, how long and uncertain this scary part of the quarantine and lockdown was. It was like, I can't launch a Kickstarter right now. I'll never. People will be like, I don't ever want to see you again. You know, it's like I can't do it. And it's like now, you know, as I'm singing those newer songs, people are just saying like, when is that coming out? When is that coming out? When is that coming out? And I'm like, listen, you guys, I want to put these songs out too, but I'm going to need the whole family up in here if we're going to be able to actually do this in the middle of this pandemic. So I am desperate to get those songs out because they feel so urgent. You know, it's like you write these songs. Some songs they're like, it's fine, you know, whenever that comes out, that's fine, whatever. But these feel so very urgent. And so I just am so desperate to get them out. So I'm
Yeah.
going stir crazy just sitting on them. So
I'm so excited to hear them. That's going to be
yeah,
amazing.
thanks.
Can people find out about that on your website?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Website, and then also my Facebook fan page. That's where most of the action is happening these days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You are active on there. It's so great. Today, I was like, just like stalking you a little bit. I have been for the last week or so, but
Nice.
today I saw your 90s part two.
Oh yeah,
That
that
with
was
Heather
so
May.
fun. That's
It
part of
looked,
our part together. So that's a part of our post-COVID community. We call it a part
ah,
together. And so we were meeting on Sundays, and then after our Pride tour that we did the first ever virtual Pride tour.
that's
And
awesome.
so once we recovered and had a vacation after that, we were like, okay, we got to get back into a part together. What are we gonna do? Give them something fun. And so we did a couple of '90s nights, and they just loved it so much. So
That is awesome.
yeah, it
And
was super fun.
the other thing, because my dog is barking right now to get in the house.
Did you hear the dog song?
I did. You still have Juice?
She is right here. She is always right here. There is never, anytime we come in this room to do any kind of music, this dog has been around music her entire life. So anytime there's even the remote chance that some music is going to happen, she is like in her spot on the rug, laid out, quiet as a mouse, just waiting for the music.
I love it so much. Can you
Yeah.
please come to PEI with your dog?
I would love to. I'm like, I think I can drive there. I can do it.
Big time. Anything else that people should know? Oh, you have a Patreon. Is that still
Oh yeah,
happening?
absolutely. Yeah. So I actually just got my next. I got a brand new change maker. I've got my layers, my tiers broken down by my album. So I have my army of lovers. I've got my Imagineers and my change makers. And so we're gonna start having our roundtables for the change makers, doing a social justice roundtable. So yeah, come over and check it out. I've actually have released two brand new songs that are only able to be heard on my Patreon. So yeah, go over there. And actually, the song that I wrote about John Lewis, which is like my first viral video. I was so excited. This was a big week this past week in the pandemic. It was like, it's a pandemic, but I've got my first viral video. It's like the coolest thing because for a social justice songwriter, it's like, those aren't like, that's not who we, you know, we're not those people that are just like, oh man, did you hear that hot new social justice song by Chris Matthews? You know what I mean? Like, that's never the conversation that is going to come out of anybody's mouth, I don't think. So it's just like the coolest thing because it's a song about John Lewis, who I just adored and just respect and just admire so much. And so to have that song be the song that is like being spread all over the world is just making my little heart so very happy. And
Oh,
so on my Patreon for my September, I'm actually going to release a piano version of that song. So
cool.
it's a cool thing. And most of my fans have never heard me play piano. So I'm going to dust the old chops off and give them a little something exciting.
I know we're going to get a chance to do the reverse later on in this
Yeah,
global music
I
match.
can't wait. I'm so excited.
Yeah, it's awesome. And seriously, I wish you could come over to my house right now.
Totally. It's like we could just hang and sing and music and songs and let the dogs play.
Oh,
Man, it could
yeah.
be great.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome, love. Have a good night.
Take care.
All right, cheers.